Thank you all for coming to the Sierra Club Dance Conservation and Outings launch event. This is like kind of a preliminary launch because eventually, in a couple months, we're going to be hiring a part-time organizer to work on this stuff. So this is kind of just a celebration of what we've been able to accomplish and what we're going to accomplish. So instead of me speaking today, I'm going to let a couple of my national staff members talk about how land conservation is really benefiting the country and how we can do that here in Vermont.
And glad to be back. So I'll just say a little bit about me really quickly and how I last worked for Sierra Club, because I think a lot of Sierra Club's strength and importance over the last 100+ years comes from meetings like this and a lot of volunteer leadership that has really led us to be as successful as we've been. And I'm from Vermont originally, grew up in Essex and Charlotte, ended up moving out to Seattle, Washington with very little idea what I wanted to do. Had it in my head that it would be a cool idea to start working for Sierra Club. When I looked them up, it turned out they're about a block and a half from where my partner and I had a new rental. So I walked down the street, started volunteering for Sierra Club. One thing led to another. I was in meetings like this. Then I was organizing in the field in rural communities, trying to get more wilderness designations passed in the Cascade Range and in the Olympic Peninsula. After that, I ended up doing a little bit more on the forest conservation space, since that's pretty much what I found myself talking about 40 hours a week, probably more. And now I'm managing our forest campaign work and working with the folks around the country doing a lot of different efforts, including Zach from Standing Trees, and stitching together a lot of our different work and having the good fortune of being able to balance two of the things that I really care most about, which is one, being able to engage with folks who really care about these things in a deep, heartfelt, personal sort of way. And then two, trying to use that as a way to leverage real ability to meet the goals that we're trying to make as far as conservation goes. And so, fortunately, in the last, year and a half, 2 years, one of the main ways that that's been occurring at the national level with the Biden administration has been pushing for mature and old growth forest protections on national forests, which has been a really exciting thing. I think, I will say, growing up in Vermont, I was under the impression that state parks, national forests, Camelstown, Mansfield, whatever it would be, are all sort of managed in the same way, which is not the case. I think as many folks here will know. And to start to learn that the forests that are on these public lands, that especially for young people are about the only kind of thing that we can afford to purchase anymore or have in our possession anymore. These were the places that really held the most biodiversity value, held the most climate value, held the most carbon value, and as a public resource, there was this feeling of almost like civic engagement around the need to weigh in about how these are managed and how we can be doing that. And so when the Biden administration put forward this effort to conserve mature and old growth forests around the country, so on all national forests, wherever they may be, from the Green Mountain to the Olympic in Washington State, it really poses an opportunity to be making some major strides, not just in that classic conservation work that Sierra Club has been doing in the bread and butter sort of way since, we got our logo all over here, Yosemite. So that's creation of national park, like grassroots organizing kind of thing. We're almost at a moment of doing a lot of that work again, like conservation, grassroots organizing to deliver the things that we want to see via the people that we know can do that. And so pushing on targets, Teddy Roosevelt in this example, President Biden in that current example, of making sure that they can do the right thing right now and really meet the moment. And so as we push for these mature and old growth forests, we've been able to engage people from all around the country, Sierra Club chapters from all around the country, who are calling and saying, this is what mature and old growth protection looks like in my part of the U.S., and this is how I want to see it fed up into a national campaign. And so Sierra Club's been able to consolidate a lot of that people power and a lot of that conservation effort to not just say we care about these places for outdoor recreation and the values of habitat and wildlife and biodiversity and the spiritual renewal that you feel when you go outside, but also because especially now, the climate value of these places is just immense. And so I've been personally excited to be a part of this effort, again, because it really does feed that piece of grassroots organizing at a scale where you can deliver these things and make a difference. The Sierra Club's been a great venue to do that. And I will say I'm really excited about this next time because we're now hiring somebody new in Vermont to pick up that mantle and do some of that work and really dig into some of the opportunities that Sierra Club and other NGOs in this area can be partnering on to deliver some real solutions. Our logo and our slogan, which is probably around here somewhere, of explore, enjoy, protect. I think this is probably the part of Sierra Club that gets to have the most fun in the organizing work. You know, shutting down coal plants is gratifying in the end, but conservation work is gratifying throughout. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to work with the person who's coming on and taking this over as we try and get more outings up and running, building that sense of community that Vermont does really well anyway, but that Sierra Club can also be contributing to and playing a part in, and just getting outside and having a good time and being able to turn that enjoyment and sense of place and love for a particular spot into something more around quality conservation. So that's our work in a nutshell. I'm consolidating about 125 years of Sierra Club conservation efforts into 3.5, 4 minutes. So that's the essence of really how the work gets done. And
thanks, Rob. Thanks, Alex. Thank you all for being here. This is really what gives me the energy to keep doing this work, is seeing when people come together like this over a shared interest, which is protecting nature and this beautiful world that we live in. So my name is Gabriel, Gabriel Silva. I always go by Gabriel or Gabe, whatever y'all want to call me. And I'm one of the senior Northeast field organizers focused on conservation. And I'm here today to talk to you about exactly that, conserving in the Northeast. So Alex told you about how this work is important across the nation, and now I want to bring it back to where we are right now, which is Vermont. So at the Sierra Club, one of our major priorities is conserving 30% of land, water, wildlife by 2030. I'm sure many of you have heard this many times by now, 30 by 30. The thing is that we can't achieve that goal by just trying to conserve large swaths of land in the West, which is where a lot of our conservation work has been focused more recently. For us to really accomplish 30 by 30, it needs to be a truly national effort, and that includes the Northeast. So while the Northeast might be significantly developed in some parts under private ownership in some other parts, while it has its own unique set of challenges when it comes to conserving land, the Northeast has some incredible natural landscapes. It's got mature no-growth forests, it has coastlines and wetlands, and most importantly, not most importantly, but also importantly, is biodiversity. And so this is all things that deserves protection just as much as anywhere else in the country. And Vermont itself is a wealth of forested land. I mean, just look at this. If nothing else needs protection, it's this. And so I want to do whatever I can to help you all protect some of the beautiful nature that you have in your wonderful state. So at the Sierra Club, what we really believe in is a vision of a natural world that everybody can explore and enjoy, a healthy, protected world. And the key that we believe in, that we need to achieve that vision, is grassroots power. In other words, all of you who are here right now. This is extremely important. We believe this because it is the grassroots that at the end of the day are impacted the most by overdevelopment and by every decision we take to harm our natural world harms our communities. And it's our communities who are the ones who have the most to gain from protecting these natural lands. But most importantly, it's our communities, it's our people, our grassroots base that has the power to protect them in the first place. So beyond these moral considerations for really giving importance to the grassroots is the fact that the grassroots power is also strategic. It's, well, powerful. So we believe that at the Sierra Club, it's one of our strengths. We have thousands, if not tens of thousands of supporters throughout the country, and even here in Vermont. And so we believe that by giving a megaphone to our people, our base, our supporters around the country and in Vermont, then we can put serious pressure on all of our elected officials, even large private landowners and the industry leaders, so they can actually start taking conservation seriously. But again, we need the grassroots. We need mass participation in order to do that. As you all know, Rob Kidd, right over here, is our only staffer in Vermont. And the fact that he's been able to hold down an entire chapter by himself this long just is a testament to how much of a powerhouse he is. It's practically unmatched, really. But at the end of the day, like I said, our movement relies on mass participation, right? It's not about individuals. And so what we at National want to do is provide the support that please do in helping to grow the volunteer base of Vermont, and so we can be able to protect and conserve even more land moving forward. And so one way that we hope to do that is by having a lot more outings. Now, who here likes outings? Right? Honestly, who doesn't? I don't think I saw any hand that didn't go up. And you go to anybody, any group of people, and you ask them who wants to just go hang out outdoors for a bit, as long as the weather is nice. Most people are going to put their hands up. So what we believe is that outings could be an extremely effective way to bring more people in. If we can get them out there and show them, look at the beauty of this land. What if we were to tell you that it's under threat, that there's whatever campaign it is we decide to do, that we show them that what you're seeing in front of you now could no longer be there tomorrow. What is it that you think we can do to stop that? What can we do to protect it? And just start asking some of those kinds of questions to people and start bringing them in, forming relationships with them, moving at the speed of trust, so we can bring people together into a family that can look at this and see it as for what it really is, which is something that needs protecting, and something that we all need to take very seriously. Now, the thing is that running outings, bringing people in, having democratically led planning processes, we can determine what the campaign plan is going to be, do all of this kind of stuff, and all the other jargon that I can throw at you. All of that takes a lot of time and a lot of people. And so I think if you take anything else, if you take anything out of this meeting or this great hangout today, it's the question, what can I do to get more involved? So I hope you leave here asking yourself, how can I help? How can I help Rob make sure that he doesn't feel like he's the only one when he knows and I know that he isn't? We are all part of an incredible group of people. We all believe in the same thing. And so that's all I had. I'm just really excited to be able to be a part of this. It's been great working with Rob, and I can't wait to get to meet and know each and every one of you as we figure out how it is that we want to conserve natural lands in Vermont, not just tomorrow, but for the next generation and all of their next generations.
Thank you all for coming, because without people, this wouldn't happen. Just me in the room, Alex, there's nobody here, so thank you all for coming out. But then, actually, what Gabriel mentioned is like, yeah, the Sierra Club is a club. It's about connecting with people. And some of the things I always talk about is, you can go into any boring church basement, go into the State House, hear every presentation about how we're doomed or how we need to do this. But the only way we're going to be able to strive is by connecting with people. So part of the thing I'm really excited about, this whole idea about outings, is about connecting with people. A few of you in the room here were at the Mount Milo hike we did a month and a half ago. There was no snow yet. And it was great. It was like this energy of people who didn't know each other were connecting and talking to people, talking about the issues. It's not all about, we need to protect this particular land today. We need to protect all these lands. And how are we going to protect all these lands? By connecting with people and instilling this ethic of land protection. So that's why this kind of outings things is really important. So I know a couple of you have been on those. Anita has helped me with organizing bike outings. That's what's going to really help us building, attracting more people to this type of movement to connect and build the lands, why we should protect these lands. So I'm not going to lecture anymore, but I'm going to encourage you all to sign up, connect with me, to then take the next step. Sierra Club has a full outings program. We can train you on how to lead outings and the best practices. First aid kits. I actually bought a bunch of first aid kits, so if you also need, I'll hand you one. But those things are what we need. We need you to help with this connecting with the community. And when we say outings, it's not hiking the top of Mount Mansfield. It's not walking in Hubbard Park. So for anybody who doesn't know, that's the former parks director of Mount Hillier, who did a phenomenal job transitioning Hubbard Park and making it a national resource. Well, thank you, Jeff. So, but that's part of it. It's all about the lands in your backyard. Not just about the top of the highest mountain. It's about where we connect with people. So that's what we all have to think about doing. So if you have an outing in your backyard you want to do, you have an outing on a landscape that you think may need protecting, let's talk. Let's do it. So we can do some questions and answers. David.
What about the training for outing, for leading an outing?
Most of the Sierra Club outings are led by volunteers, including our national ones. The national ones are actually, most of them are paid. You have to pay to join them, but that's part of the fundraising for the Sierra Club National. The local ones are all volunteers. We don't charge for them. And so, but in order to become an outings leader, there's like a short online course you have to take. And it's probably 5 hours, I'm not sure, the total. And it basically teaches you about how to sweep from behind, what first aid things you need. So that's one of the important things. Then as well as you need to have first aid training. So in case somebody has a heart attack in the middle of the trail or they cut themselves, you know how to respond. So it's pretty simple. Our hopes are with this campaign is once we identify enough of you, we'll do a group training. So then we can all do it at one time. And then we can go out and explore. Like, actually, ideally, I'd love to just lead people here tonight with a snowshoe. I got some headlamps, but I'm not doing that tonight. But we can do that. Anita referenced a friend of hers who runs the Millstone trails in Barrett. Maybe we can do a night snowshoe there or something. Any idea that you all have is really important. So, but it's a simple training process. You just have to dedicate some time just to have the best practices. Daniel.
This is probably for Dave, but it could be for Alex or for Rob. But out west, when we look at protecting public lands and achieving President Biden's 30 by 30 goal, in my view, the biggest obstacle in conserving land out west is the oil and gas. I mean, there just are, when you look at all the different things you can do on public lands, hike, hunt, fish, and go for oil and gas. The biggest obstacle in conserving land is the oil and gas industry. What's the biggest obstacle to conserving land in New England?
You can tell he works for fighting oil and gas. Here, April or.
So I'll let you hear what Alex has to say, but my first crack at answering that question, I think since I started about a year ago, what I've been coming to learn is that in the Northeast, one major difference between the West is that here, being the origins of the United States, it's much older, it's been a lot more developed, and it's much more private land. So out west, you have much larger tracts of federal public land that we're trying to improve the designation of them. Here, we're really kind of starting from scratch. We're talking about land that is not protected at all in some cases, and in other cases might be a little bit, but under not as much protection as we might like. And so we are looking at a completely different political landscape and material landscape when it comes to conservation. So this is another reason why we need so many more people, because I do not have the answers for this. But bringing enough people together, we can find creative ways, different ways that we can conserve land in a way that fits with the culture of the Northeast. So we're not just replicating what we do in the West, but finding our own unique solutions here. Hopefully that answers it.
I think the first answer to the question that I think is probably most interesting is that, especially right now, 2023, people think that we are facing the existential threat of climate change. Sorry, people are not thinking that. We are facing the existential threat of climate change. The biggest loss of habitat and of ecosystems, though, is generally from development. In a place like the Northeast or the East Coast generally, where there is a paucity of public lands, I think that there's an argument to be made that the relative value of those public lands is far superior than it is out west. That's not to say that we are looking at an equivalency of like what is, Yosemite or Grand Teton versus Green Mountain National Forest. However, as far as Vermont in the last 5 years, the population has boomed, it's gone way up. So as that happens, and people are moving here because of the lifestyle, because they care about these places, and of course they should, this is great, there's going to be that added pressure on these landscapes. You mentioned oil and gas as a major driving industry of landscapes out west. That is definitely true. I think the version of that extractive industry that generally hits forested landscapes, national forests kind of across the board, is more of the logging timber industry. It's a different version of a debate. I think oil and gas, people are very comfortable saying, end the addiction to fossil fuels, we should. The debate around forests and management and what is right especially in an era of climate change and invasive species and adapting landscapes, there's more generalities and more nuance, I think, that ends up happening in that. However, a piece that's really important to not lose track of is that these landscapes are really critical, and this is areas that the entire general public of Vermont, the entire citizenry of Vermont, people generally have a say in how that's managed. In the United States, private ownership of anything is king. And so to still have these remaining pieces, regardless of where they are, I think it's just this amazing amount of influence that we can bring to that. And could totally go down the rabbit hole of Eastern landscapes generally, but also interesting to keep in mind that, Vermont and much of the East Coast, Vermont and Hampshire, maybe most of all, right out of the gate, these areas totally denuded of forests. We decided we wanted sheep rather than forests back in the days. That was the industry. So woolen mills and cutting timber to operate all these things was that was the thing. And so now I think people have a better understanding of to think that a lot of people, whether they're active on it or not, have a really general, better understanding of the value of those places.
I'll give good answers.
Well, actually, I didn't give my answer on this one yet. So that's something Alex talked about, the connection with people. And that's what I think is critical about this kind of campaign we want to do. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of the Hennes principles of democratic organizing, but it's kind of like connecting with people and letting people speak for themselves in their community, not just us dictating our values onto the landscape, kind of acknowledging the traditional landscape. So that's something I think we need to do as community, not just be okay, how are we going to change this? Yes, we're going to change it because we want to reflect our values, but we've got to hear people out.
And so I feel that is the answer, my answer to your question is about, I think the biggest problem is the lack of trust in community we have. And that's what I think we need to do. Develop a community across the political spectrum. It's not if you're a libertarian, a liberal, progressive, Republican, conservative, whatever. We need to connect the dots about why people feel the way they do. So that's where I'm looking at. Jeff?
I would suggest how you could build trust and really empower local communities. And Montpelier, my experience was there's a fragmentation in the number of private property owners that was paralyzing because there was a conflict of interest. The private owners wanted. In Charlotte, they had this model that was brilliant that you could model, and that was when they had conservation plans and greenbelt idea, and then they had this pot of money.
Curtis.
Sierra Club helped communities identify wealthy landowners in their neighborhoods who would do this. And what they would do is they'd buy a piece of property and then they carve off a small section to be developed, and then they hold on to for conservation the rest of it. And they often could sell that property for as much as they bought it because, well, not everybody wants to be a big landowner, but when you have something next to a park, it increases the value of that property by 30%. Now, the beauty of that is now you have someone who wants to be next to a bike path or wants to be next to a park. So you have a match as opposed to a random person buys that property, they don't want to be next to a trail, they don't want to be next to a bike path, they don't want to be next to that. So you're matching, increasing the value, selling it for about the same amount, and then you buy another property for that same amount of money, sell it.
You sound like a perfect person to join the Sierra Club. That's a hard target. Ben?
To take the next step in that question all the way around, the way Vermont has historically responded to the lack of public lands is the buyback program via conservation systems. Exactly what you're talking about. Vermont Housing Conservation Board, VCB, has partnered with Sierra Club, with DNRC, and a couple others that we're forgetting the acronyms for. So the total easements around the state, however they usually do it by buying back those properties from landowners or basically paying landowners that it stays it's concerned with the pressure from outside the state that's starting to drive things up. So you compete against private landowners or private purchasers to actually purchase those lands that you can conserve. Some of the issues that we ran into around actually concerning mine was the lack of zoning laws in Vermont. So each town's zone laws are governed by their select board. Many select boards don't have any on the books. So it's free to whoever goes in and purchases those properties where they can develop, non-set aside for conservation, not necessarily set aside for residency or anything like that. So as Sierra Club builds a wider scope around the state, you can go into each select board and see how they're zoned their land within the township. To see whether or not they actually are protecting themselves against outside developers who are just having max fires, so public lands or private lands, instead of conservation. South Burlington ran into the same issue, and the state had to step in. I forget exactly what the development project was, but it was because it's the birthplace of Joseph Smith. It was more of a retail coming and buying a lot of land to create a larger community. The state had to step in and rezone the area or get an injunction against being done. I don't know the case law very well. But a way for Sierra Club to get involved would be guiding folks on actual design of those zoning laws.
Darn, I got you connected with our energy law.
I think you're going to Lance.
Frank?
The 30 by 30 number, where are we at right now? Which do we have?
Does anybody know this numbers?
So I think we're at New York
In Vermont.
country.
I was gonna say,
You said
Either or both.
well, I only know the country. Yeah, I was gonna say I think like 11 to 13%.
Yeah.
I don't have the state by state number, but I think Vermont is slightly. Now, there's a question of how. Sorry.
There's a question of,
Stand up and let's so we can see.
Stand up over here, Dave.
Well, I'm not gonna say much, it's just, there's the question of how much of state's land is natural or not developed, and then how much of it is protected from future development. Those are slightly two different questions, so I don't know, so some states like Maine, for example, they have more than 30% of their land is forested natural land, but it's not protected. So that can change at any time in the future. So it kind of depends on some of that. So in other words, I don't have an answer for Vermont.
So I'll give you Biden. I mean, Biden's 30 by 30. Does he want protected or
Protected, yeah.
that's what he's shooting for?
So in reference to Vermont, for those who know the natural landscape history of Vermont, we're mostly cleared for farming, because we're the breadbasket for the country. And then all of a sudden we revived, so actually we have more trees and more conserved land now than we did 100 years ago. Now, the problem that's happening now is we're having what's called parcelization, fragmentation that's happening, is a lot of these lands are in private ownership. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's probably about 20% that's actually conserved land. But then how much is the big open tracts of land, particularly in the Northeast Kingdom, that are still open? And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, we have room to move. But you don't realize what happens when we develop land and it's not protecting us against the floods. Like we just had some more floodplain in the land, the rivers would overflow there. Now, if we had more species migration, especially with the wildlife corridors, they're actually talking about putting like a ramp over top of I-89 between Richmond and Waterbury to help the species move over. That divides up, but every time you build a house, build another development, whatever, it cuts off the species diversity. And especially with the migration with climate change happening, we need to protect that as much as possible. So that's part of the element of why we need to do that. And a lot of these lands are in private ownership. And a lot of the Vermont being an aging population, they sell it off, they leave it to their kids who are like, oh, we can sell this land and make a lot of money. So we have to think about how we do a better job of that. And Frank, actually, I love talking to your friend David about how he bought 150 acres because he's a hunter and he wants to conserve the land. And that's where I say some of the things where we need to do is talk to people in these communities, not just be on our own little idea. Like I personally don't like hunting. I'm never going to get behind shooting them. Right, Conti? So, but that's where we need to kind of connect with people, hear where people's stories are.